Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're tackling something pretty familiar, intelligence, but we're going to maybe twist it around a little bit today. We're not just talking about, human intelligence, but intelligence across the entire tree of life.
Yeah.
From like amoebas to Einstein.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to dive into this one. I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It's a really interesting topic. And, when we think about intelligence, we so often get sort of trapped in our own human perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And, there's intelligence all around us, all throughout nature.
Right.
And so by taking this broader view, I think it really challenges our assumptions and helps us to appreciate the interconnectedness of life in a new way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I'm curious to sort of start like at the very beginning.
Okay.
Like, what is intelligence even? Is it something that can you define it, or is it just sort of like it when you see it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? And philosophers and scientists have been grappling with that one for centuries.
Right.
But at its core, I think we can define intelligence as a system for processing information. So taking in inputs from the environment, interpreting those inputs, and then producing some kind of output, some kind of action or behavior.
Yeah, so it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that process, that information processing, is something that even the simplest life forms have to do in order to survive.
Okay, so you're telling me that like an amoeba is intelligent.
Well, imagine you're a single-celled organism, right? You're floating around in a pond, and you need to find food, avoid danger, and maybe even reproduce.
Yeah.
All of that requires responding to your environment in a meaningful way.
Okay.
Which means taking in information, processing it, and reacting accordingly.
So like even an amoeba is running some kind of program to figure out like what to do next.
Exactly. And that program, those basic rules for information processing, is what scientists are starting to call Basal Cognition.
Basal Cognition, okay.
So it's kind of like the foundation of intelligence that we see in even the most primitive life forms.
So no brain required.
Not necessarily. Take slime mold, for example.
A slime mold.
This is a single-celled organism that's become like a bit of a rock star in the world of intelligence research.
Right, I've heard of this guy.
Yeah, because this little guy, or girl, I guess, with no brain to speak of, can solve mazes.
No way.
That's amazing. Yeah. It leaves behind a chemical trail as it moves, effectively creating an external memory of where it's been.
Oh, interesting.
And this allows it to avoid dead ends and find the most efficient path to a food source.
Oh, that's really cool. So it's like, it's learning in a way.
Right. It's exhibiting a form of spatial memory and problem solving, even without a centralized brain.
That's wild. But I'm still struggling with this idea of like basal cognition.
Yeah.
Does that mean that like slime mold is conscious or like aware of what it's doing?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of what intelligence really is,
Right.
We tend to equate intelligence with consciousness.
Yeah.
But it's possible to have complex information processing without conscious awareness.
Okay.
Take plants, for example.
Plants, okay.
They can sense light, gravity, water, and even chemical signals from other plants.
Wow.
And they use this information to make decisions about growth, reproduction, and defense.
So are you saying plants are intelligent?
Well, it depends on how you define intelligence, right?
Right.
I mean, they don't have brains or nervous systems in the way that animals do.
Yeah.
But they've evolved these incredibly sophisticated systems for processing information.
Okay, that's fascinating.
And instead of having a centralized brain, they have this decentralized network of cells and tissues that communicate and make decisions collectively.
So it's like the intelligence is distributed throughout the whole organism.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does a plant like decide to grow towards light? I mean, it's not like it's consciously thinking about it, right?
Right. It's not a conscious decision in the way that we think about it. It's all about the laws of physics and chemistry playing out in this complex system.
Okay.
So when light hits a plant's leaves, it triggers a cascade of chemical reactions.
Okay.
These reactions produce hormones that signal to other parts of the plant, stimulating growth in the direction of the light source.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not a conscious decision, but rather a series of physical and chemical processes that lead to a behavior that benefits the plant's survival.
So it's like a domino effect, but on a molecular scale?
Exactly. And this idea that intelligence is ultimately a physical process applies to us humans as well, right?
Right.
Our thoughts, feelings, actions, they're all the result of neurons firing and chemicals interacting in our brains.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's just that our system is far more complex than, say, a slime mold's.
Yeah, I mean, we like to think so, at least.
Right, of course. But it's all built on the same fundamental principles.
Okay. So, but doesn't that, like, take some of the magic out of human intelligence? I mean, if it's all just physics and chemistry, what makes us so special?
Well, that's where we get into the really fascinating territory of how complexity arises from simple rules.
Okay.
Think about it. The same basic building blocks of matter and energy give rise to everything.
Yeah.
From stars to planets to life itself. And within the realm of life, we see this incredible diversity of intelligence emerging from these same fundamental principles of information processing.
So it's not just about the ingredients. It's about how they're arranged and how they interact.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to this remarkable adaptability of life.
Okay.
From the slime mold leaving its chemical trail to a plant bending towards the sun, each organism has evolved its own unique solutions to these challenges of surviving in this constantly changing world.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. This is making me rethink what intelligence means, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not just about having a big brain or being able to, like, solve complex equations.
Right.
It's about being able to effectively respond to your environment, whatever that environment may be.
And that's what's so exciting about studying intelligence across the tree of life.
Yeah, right. By looking at these diverse examples, we can gain a deeper understanding of how intelligence works, how it evolves, and what it truly means to be smart in this grand scheme of things.
Yeah, no, I love that. This idea of like a decentralized network of intelligence in plants is especially intriguing to me.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about how that works
Oh, yeah.
and like what implications that might have for our understanding of other intelligence systems like artificial intelligence and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, prepare to enter the fascinating world of the what's called the Wood Wide Web.
The Wood Wide Web.
It's a great term, right?
It is, yeah. What is that?
So it turns out plants don't just process information individually. They also communicate with each other through this vast underground network of fungal connections.
Whoa, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, so explain that. Yeah, so imagine this vast network of fungal threads weaving through the soil, connecting the roots of trees and plants over huge distances.
Wow.
It's like a natural internet for the forest.
Oh, that's a great analogy. So how do they actually use this network to communicate? Like, they don't have email or text messages, right?
Right, no, they don't have smartphones or anything like that.
Okay, good.
But they communicate through chemical signals.
Okay.
These signals can travel through the fungal network, allowing plants to share information about things like nutrient availability, pest attacks, or even drought stress.
So if one tree is like being attacked by insects, it can send out a warning signal to other trees in the network.
Exactly. And those other trees can then start producing defensive compounds to prepare for the attack.
Wow. So they're like helping each other out?
Yeah, it's this remarkable example of cooperation and collective intelligence in the plant world.
This is blowing my mind. I always thought of plants as being pretty passive, just sitting there and soaking up the sun. But it turns out they're engaged in this like complex underground communication network.
It's a whole other world beneath our feet.
It is.
And it highlights this key point. Intelligence isn't just about having a big brain or being able to solve complex equations.
Right.
It's about being able to effectively respond to your environment and interact with other organisms in a way that enhances your survival.
Okay, so we've got this decentralized network of intelligence in plants, but then you have animals with their centralized brains and nervous systems.
Right.
Does that mean animals are inherently more intelligent than plants?
I wouldn't say it's that simple.
Okay.
Remember, intelligence is a spectrum,
Okay.
and it manifests in different ways depending on the organism and its environment.
Right.
Animals have evolved their own incredible cognitive abilities, but they often rely on a combination of centralized and decentralized strategies.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow. Can you give me an example of how that works in animals?
Sure. Think about a flock of birds or a school of fish. Each individual animal is making its own decisions based on its limited perception of the environment.
Yeah.
But the group as a whole exhibits a kind of collective intelligence, moving in this coordinated way that benefits all members.
It's like they're all following this set of simple rules that when combined produce this like complex and elegant group behavior.
Exactly. And those rules are often encoded in their genes, shaped by evolution over millions of years.
Oh, wow.
It's a form of decentralized intelligence that's incredibly effective for things like finding food, avoiding predators, and navigating long distances.
So even without like a leader
Yeah.
or central brain calling the shots, they can achieve these like amazing feats of coordination.
Precisely. And this same principle can be seen in other animal societies,
Okay.
like ant colonies or beehives.
Right.
The individuals have limited cognitive abilities, but through their interactions and communication, they create this superorganism capable of complex problem solving and decision making.
Okay, so we've talked about collective intelligence in animals, but what about the more individualistic side of animal cognition? I mean, some animals seem to be capable of pretty sophisticated thinking on their own.
Absolutely. When we look at tool use, problem solving, and social intelligence in animals, we see some truly remarkable examples of cognitive complexity.
What are some of the examples of animal tool use that really stand out to you?
Well, chimpanzees using sticks to fish for termites is a classic example.
Yeah, I've seen videos of that.
They're selecting the right type of stick, stripping off the leaves, modifying it to make it more effective.
Wow.
It shows a level of planning and understanding of cause and effect that's quite impressive.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And crows are famous for their tool-making abilities.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I'm sure you've seen those videos of them fashioning hooks out of twigs to retrieve food from hard-to-reach places.
It's almost like they're like engineers.
Yeah, they are incredibly resourceful. And it's not just primates and birds.
Okay.
Sea otters use rocks to crack open shellfish. Dolphins use sponges to protect their snouts while foraging.
Huh, I didn't know that.
And even some octopuses have been observed carrying coconut shells around for shelter.
That's amazing. Okay, those are all like amazing examples of like physical problem solving.
Yeah.
But what about social intelligence? How do animals navigate like the complexities of their social worlds?
Yeah, that's a great question. Social intelligence is a whole other fascinating dimension of animal cognition.
Okay.
It involves things like recognizing individuals, understanding social hierarchies, forming alliances, and communicating effectively.
So it's not just about being physically adept, it's about being socially savvy.
Exactly. And we see evidence of this in many species,
Okay.
from primates to elephants to dolphins.
Wow.
They have complex communication systems, they engage in cooperative behaviors,
Yeah.
they show empathy and compassion, and they even seem to have a sense of fairness.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about those experiments where monkeys would refuse to participate in a task if they saw another monkey being rewarded unfairly.
Exactly. Those studies suggest that some animals have this sense of fairness and equity, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
And it highlights how intelligence is often intertwined with social behavior.
So it's not just about how smart you are as an individual.
Yeah.
It's about how well you can like function within a group.
Right. And that brings us back to this idea that intelligence isn't this single monolithic trait.
Yeah.
It's this collection of cognitive abilities that have evolved to help organisms survive and thrive in their particular ecological niches.
This has been a fascinating exploration of intelligence in plants and animals.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder, where do we humans fit into all of this?
Right.
We tend to think of ourselves as like the pinnacle of intelligence.
Yeah.
But after learning about all these other like amazing examples, I'm starting to question that assumption a little bit.
Well, it's a question worth pondering, right?
Yeah.
Human intelligence is undoubtedly remarkable, but it's important to remember that we're a part of this grand evolutionary story of intelligence on Earth.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right.
We're a product of this long lineage of increasingly complex information processing systems.
So we need to be careful about falling into that trap of anthropocentrism.
Yes.
Thinking that we're somehow separate from or superior to the rest of the natural world.
Exactly. We need to recognize that human intelligence is just one expression of this incredible phenomenon that we see throughout the tree of life.
Yeah.
And by studying other forms of intelligence, we can gain a deeper understanding of our own cognitive abilities and our place in this web of life.
Okay, so we've gone from amoebas to plants to animals.
Right.
And now we're starting to circle back to humans.
Right.
I'm really curious to hear where you take us next.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into that.
Yeah, I think what the areas I'm most curious about is this idea of how we can learn from other forms of intelligence, especially like as we get into artificial intelligence, right?
Right,
But
right.
there's so much potential there, but also, there's some risks.
Yeah.
And maybe we could learn something by looking at how intelligence works in nature.
You've hit on a crucial point there.
Yeah.
As we develop these increasingly sophisticated AI systems,
Yeah.
it's essential that we consider that broader context of intelligence in the natural world.
Oh, okay.
So we can ask, what can we learn from billions of years of evolution?
Yeah.
How can we avoid the pitfalls of anthropocentrism
Right.
in our approach to AI?
And we were just talking about decentralized intelligence in plants and animals.
Right.
Could that offer some insights
Yeah.
into how we might design AI systems that are more like robust and adaptable?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of the traditional AI research has focused on creating these like centralized systems
Okay.
where you have a single powerful algorithm that's in control. But nature offers all these examples of how decentralized intelligence can be incredibly effective.
So instead of trying to create like a single super brain in a box,
Right.
we could look to things like ant colonies or fungal networks for inspiration.
Exactly. Think about how an ant colony functions, right?
Okay.
No single ant has a map of the entire colony or a grand plan for what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yet through these simple rules and local interactions,
Yeah.
the colony as a whole exhibits these remarkable problem-solving abilities. They
Right.
can find food, they can build intricate nests, they can even defend themselves against attackers.
It's like each ant is a tiny piece of a larger intelligence.
Yeah,
And the colony's intelligence emerges from like their collective behavior.
precisely. And this kind of decentralized intelligence has some inherent advantages.
Okay, like what?
Well, for one, it's incredibly robust.
Okay.
If a few ants get lost or die, the colony can easily adapt and continue functioning.
It's not reliant on like any one individual.
Exactly. There's no single point of failure that could bring down the whole system.
That makes sense. And it also seems like it would be harder for a decentralized system to be like hijacked or manipulated by
Right.
like a single bad actor.
That's another potential benefit, right?
Yeah.
In a centralized system, if you control the central algorithm,
Yeah.
you control the whole system.
Right.
But in a decentralized system, power is distributed, making it more difficult for any one entity to exert undue influence.
That's really interesting. So how are researchers actually applying these ideas from nature to the development of AI?
Well, one area that's showing a lot of promise is what's called swarm intelligence,
Swarm intelligence.
which draws inspiration from the collective behavior of social insects like ants and bees.
Okay.
These algorithms, they simulate many simple agents
Okay.
that interact with each other and their environment according to a set of basic rules.
And from those simple interactions, these like more complex behaviors emerge.
Exactly. It's like those flocks of birds we were talking about earlier.
Right, right.
Each bird is just following a few simple rules,
Right.
like stay close to your neighbors, avoid obstacles.
Yeah.
But when you have thousands of birds doing this simultaneously, you get these stunning synchronized patterns of movement.
That's amazing. So you're saying we could apply those same principles to create AI systems that are more like adaptable, resilient, and potentially even more creative.
The possibilities are truly exciting.
Yeah.
Swarm intelligence algorithms are already being used to solve these complex problems in areas like robotics,
Okay.
logistics, and even finance.
I can see how that would be useful for things like, optimizing delivery routes or managing traffic flow.
Right.
But what about like the bigger picture? Could decentralized AI help us address some of the ethical challenges
Yeah.
we're facing as AI becomes more powerful?
That's a crucial question, and one that researchers are actively exploring.
Okay.
One idea is that by distributing decision-making across a network of agents,
Yeah.
we could create AI systems that are less likely to exhibit harmful biases or be used for malicious purposes.
It's like the old saying, power corrupts. If you concentrate too much power in a single entity,
Right.
it's more likely to be abused.
Exactly. By decentralizing intelligence, we might be able to create AI systems that are more aligned with human values and goals.
Okay.
Systems that are more democratic, more transparent, and more accountable.
This has been such an incredible journey. We've gone from the intelligence of slime molds to the mind-boggling potential of decentralized AI.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
We have. The
Yeah.
study of intelligence is constantly evolving.
Yeah,
And there's so many fascinating questions yet to be answered.
for sure.
But I think the key takeaway here is that intelligence is not this uniquely human trait.
Right.
It's a fundamental property of life itself, and it manifests in countless forms throughout the natural world.
And by expanding our definition of intelligence and looking beyond our own anthropocentric biases, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of all living things.
Absolutely.
And maybe even learn how to create a future where humans and AI can coexist and thrive together.
That's a powerful vision, and one that's worth striving for.
It is.
So the next time you encounter an ant colony, a flock of birds, or even a houseplant reaching towards the sun,
Yeah.
take a moment to appreciate the intelligence at work.
Okay.
You might just be surprised by what you discover.
So, I mean, we talked about decentralized intelligence in, plants and animals.
Right.
What could that teach us about designing AI? Like, could we make AI that's, more resilient or adaptable?
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at, traditional AI research, it often focuses on these centralized systems.
Okay.
You have like a single algorithm that's kind of making all the decisions.
Okay, so like a super brain kind of thing.
Right. But, nature shows us that decentralized intelligence can be incredibly effective.
Okay.
Like think about ant colonies or those fungal networks we were talking about.
Right.
Each individual, whether it's an ant or a part of a fungus, doesn't have a complete picture, right?
Okay.
But through their simple interactions, the system as a whole can achieve these really remarkable things.
Right. So like the intelligence is kind of emerging
Exactly.
from all these interactions.
It's like it's more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And that kind of decentralized intelligence has some real advantages when you think about it.
Like what are some of those advantages?
Well, one is robustness, right? If a few ants get lost or a part of the fungal network gets damaged,
Yeah.
the system can adapt.
Okay.
It's not reliant on any single point.
So there's no like single point of failure.
Exactly. It's also potentially more secure.
Okay. How so?
Well, if you think about it, in a centralized system, if you can control the central algorithm,
Yeah.
you control the whole thing. But with decentralized intelligence, it's much harder for any one entity to kind of take over or manipulate the system.
Oh, that's interesting. So how are researchers like actually using these ideas from nature in AI development?
Well, one exciting area is swarm intelligence,
Okay.
which takes inspiration from, social insects like ants and bees.
Right.
These algorithms, they simulate lots of simple agents
Okay.
that interact with each other based on simple rules.
And from those rules, like more complex behaviors can emerge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like those flocks of birds, remember?
Yeah, right.
Each bird is just following a few simple rules, but when you have thousands of birds doing this,
Yeah.
you get these really amazing patterns.
So we could use those same principles to create AI that's like, more adaptable, more resilient, maybe even more creative.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities are really exciting.
That's cool.
Swarm intelligence is already being used in robotics, logistics, even finance.
Yeah, I can see how that would be useful for things like, optimizing traffic flow or, figuring out the best delivery routes.
Exactly.
But what about the ethical implications of AI? Could decentralized intelligence help us address some of those challenges?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and researchers are definitely thinking about that.
Okay.
One idea is that if you distribute decision-making across a network of agents,
Yeah.
you might be able to create AI that's less prone to bias or less likely to be misused
Yeah.
because there's no single entity in control.
Right.
It's more like a democratic system.
Yeah, so it's almost like, the more we learn about intelligence in nature,
Yeah.
the more we realize that our own way of doing things as humans might not be like the only way or even the best way.
Right. For centuries, we've kind of seen ourselves as separate from and superior to the natural world.
Right.
But the more we study intelligence across the tree of life, the more we see that we're part of this vast interconnected web.
And maybe we can learn some valuable lessons from that.
Absolutely. So yeah, the next time you see an ant colony or a flock of birds or even just a houseplant reaching for the sun,
Right.
take a moment to appreciate the intelligence at work.
I will.
We're surrounded by intelligence in all its forms.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And by recognizing that, we can open ourselves up to new possibilities, not just for AI,
Yeah.
but for how we understand ourselves and our place in the world.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive today.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
It really has. So to all of our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey through the world of intelligence.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.